Putin's hackers are once again suspected of prying into America's nuclear secrets, with U.S. officials and private cyber firms warning that Russian state-backed groups are zeroing in on the inboxes and networks of scientists tied to the country's most sensitive weapons programs. It is as if the Kremlin is checking on Trump's progress in nuclear fission by quietly rifling through the emails, VPNs, and collaboration tools used by U.S. nuclear experts, hunting for insights into warhead design, reactor technology, and the broader direction of America's strategic arsenal. Russian spies are effectively sitting inside U.S. inboxes in a new espionage campaign now being exposed, leveraging zero-day vulnerabilities and compromised IT management tools to burrow into government agencies, defense contractors, and critical infrastructure operators across multiple allied countries. U.S. nuclear scientists, weapons laboratories, and major defense firms have all found themselves in Putin's digital crosshairs, as GRU-linked units expand their operations from logistics and energy targets into the highly classified world of strategic weapons research and procurement. Ukraine, meanwhile, has long been treated as the test lab for this playbook, with years of Russian cyberattacks against its grids, ministries, and military networks serving as a proving ground for the tactics, malware, and tradecraft now being repurposed against NATO states and the wider West. A Russian hacking group has been accused of targeting U.S. government and defense email systems, zeroing in on accounts used by officials, contractors, and agencies tied to some of Washington's most sensitive national security work. Over the past year, that same group of Russian hackers has repeatedly gone after American nuclear scientists, using rare email exploits to burrow into lab and university inboxes in search of cutting-edge research and technical data. According to information gathered by private sector cybersecurity researchers and Western intelligence services, and released on July 23 by CNN and other outlets, the campaign represents a coordinated espionage push rather than a one-off intrusion. Investigators say the Russian operators specifically targeted email servers used by organizations linked to U.S. nuclear installations, exploiting a vulnerability that allowed them to steal months of messages without tricking victims into clicking malicious links. The operation appears to have focused heavily on nuclear fusion research and defense-related information, suggesting Moscow's interest in both potential future energy breakthroughs and their dual-use implications for advanced weapons or strategic advantage. A U.S. email security firm involved in tracking the activity said the hackers systematically probed entities with an interest in nuclear fusion, from laboratories and universities to private companies working on high-end experimental projects. The firm assessed that Russia likely wanted to see what advancements others in the fusion space have made, treating stolen emails and documents as a form of informal intelligence collection on rival scientific progress and long-term strategic capabilities. U.S. and allied cyber and intelligence agencies have warned that this is part of an ongoing Russian cyber espionage campaign, one that was tested on targets in Ukraine before being turned against NATO states and broader Western infrastructure. Russian hackers used a rare software exploit that targeted vulnerable email servers, allowing them to compromise systems by abusing flaws in how webmail clients handled specially crafted messages. In this attack, victims could be compromised simply by opening an email in a vulnerable webmail interface, because the exploit executed code as soon as the message was viewed or previewed, without any extra user interaction. Crucially, the exploit did not require users to click on links or download files, stripping away the usual need for social engineering and turning a routine inbox check into a potential point of silent compromise. Once inside, the hackers could pull an organization's entire email directory, harvesting addresses and contact structures that could be used to map networks, identify high-value targets, and stage follow-on attacks. In many cases, the same exploit could steal up to 3 months of email communications from each compromised account, giving the attackers a sweeping window into internal conversations, documents, and sensitive planning. Officials say the campaign first tested its hacking techniques on Ukraine, using the country's networks as a proving ground before rolling out the same tools and exploits against targets inside NATO nations. They argue that the pattern clearly shows Ukraine was treated as a testbed, with Russian operators refining their tradecraft there before wider deployment against Western governments and critical systems. The same campaign has since targeted a broad range of sectors, including government ministries, law enforcement bodies, defense organizations, universities, and energy companies, reflecting Moscow's interest in both hard security and the wider support ecosystem around it. According to Western assessments, the hackers were primarily seeking military, logistics, and policy information. Everything from troop movements and arms flows to sanction implementation and technology transfer controls. The latest alert warns that this group is likely to continue going after Western email systems, with officials stressing that the combination of tested exploits and persistent interest in strategic data means the threat will remain active for the foreseeable future. The warning was issued jointly by the United States and more than a dozen allied countries, signaling a coordinated international response to the Russian cyber espionage campaign. The UK Security Minister called it particularly concerning that Ukraine was targeted first, saying this reinforces the pattern of Moscow testing new tools there before turning them on NATO states. According to the FBI, Russian cyber targeting of the US has increased over the past year, with a growing number of probes and intrusions aimed at government and high-value networks. Thai authorities arrested an alleged member of the hacking group in November, and the suspect was subsequently extradited to the United States to face charges. The suspect then appeared in a Boston court last month in connection with the campaign, underscoring that at least part of the operation has now led to criminal proceedings. Russia has not publicly responded to these latest allegations, leaving the accusations and evidence unanswered in the official Russian discourse so far. Fresh spying allegations have pushed already soaring tensions between NATO and Russia to an even more dangerous level. Russia has been accused of hacking surveillance cameras across Europe as part of a large-scale intelligence-gathering operation. The allegations were made by the Netherlands' top intelligence and security agencies, both members of the NATO alliance. Russian hackers were allegedly behind the operation, using compromised cameras to monitor the transfer of Western weapons into Ukraine. The targeted devices reportedly included Chinese-made surveillance cameras, as well as internet-connected smart doorbell systems. Most of the cameras allegedly compromised by Russian operatives were privately owned and traceable through publicly accessible IP addresses. According to Dutch agencies, many of the hacked cameras were strategically positioned along key military logistics and transport routes. The report alleged that Russian hackers used the live camera feeds to identify the types of weapons being delivered to Ukraine. Authorities also claimed that cameras located along military logistics corridors in the Netherlands were among those compromised during the operation. According to Dutch agencies, this is how Russia hacked Europe. Step 1. Scan the internet for connected IP cameras. Step 2. Identify devices by brand and model. Step 3. Locate cameras that are accessible online. Step 4. Exploit weak security settings to gain access. Common weaknesses: default passwords, outdated firmware, unpatched software vulnerabilities, poor configuration, factory default settings left unchanged. Result: unauthorized remote access to live surveillance feeds. Dutch intelligence services alleged that Russia has made the Netherlands a priority target because of its central role in supporting Kiev. Netherlands' General Intelligence and Security Service said, and I quote, "Through this method of espionage, the actor gains insight into information relevant to Russia. Examples include military transport routes or the type of weapons and equipment being supplied to Ukraine." In their investigation, the services observed that a small number of cameras on military logistical routes in the Netherlands were also hacked during this large-scale international Russian operation. Organizations with IP cameras on these routes have since been warned so that they could take measures. The services have long been warning that Russia is interested in military logistical routes. As a transit country, the Netherlands is a key target for espionage due to its location and the support it provides to Ukraine. End quote.
Today, we raise the issue of halting European funding for organizations, including sports ones, that allow Russian athletes to compete under Russian flag in international competitions. Most of those athletes clearly support the war and have ties to the Russian military. It is very important that we pull things out of the drawers, and we are implementing this now. But of course, both the Carpathians and the Cloud, they will have to fulfill that main task for today after a long, exhausting war. For all the tasks that I set for both Fedorov and Sersky, because it cannot be done separately and saying that someone is to blame and someone else is not. The question of closing the sky. The question, yes, the question of a normal, if one can say so, face of mobilization. All of this, until the war is over, will have to be done together, in the union. Unfortunately, such a union did not happen earlier. Of course, I believe that Mikhailo is also on the team. I offered him several positions. The last position, not to go into the details of all our meetings, the last position was a Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine. After that, we will be able to, if we understand that we have the opportunities to discuss this plan seriously, I think there will be a trilateral meeting then. Of course, all of this needs to be done before autumn. I believe we need to work hard on this. If it were up to us, this meeting would have already taken place in July. But not everything depends on us. The Americans want to meet, but we must not forget that the Americans focus on Iran. Things in Iran are not as good as everyone would like. This is a problem for us regarding anti-ballistics, regarding the Americans' attention to Russia's war against Ukraine. We will fight for peace. We will fight for diplomacy.
Ukraine has expanded its long-range drone campaign deep inside Russia, targeting Wildberries logistics facilities for the first time. The online retail giant, often described as Russia's Amazon, has emerged as a new target in Kiev's effort to disrupt Russian logistics. Ukrainian officials have said the campaign aims to weaken Russia's supply network while bringing the effects of the war closer to Russian territory. Ukrainian drones struck 2 logistics centers operated by Wildberries in Krasnodar Krai and the Stavropol region, according to reports. Regional authorities said the facilities in Krasnodar and Novinominsk sustained damage during the overnight drone attacks. Russian officials said 1 employee was killed and several others were injured in the strikes on the logistics centers. In a separate attack, a Ukrainian drone strike on an oil depot in Armava killed another worker and triggered a major fire. Authorities said more than 16 drones targeted Armava, where falling debris ignited an 800 square meter blaze at the fuel facility. Ukraine also said MiG-29 fighter jets struck Russian assault positions in Kursk Oblast to slow advances toward the Sumy region. Kiev said the aircraft used GBU-39 and AASM Hammer precision-guided bombs against Russian assault groups and drone positions.